Have you ever felt like you're not really living your life but performing it? Like every conversation, every interaction, even the way you walk into a room feels rehearsed. You're smiling at the right times, saying the right things, reacting the way people expect you to. But inside, there's this quiet voice asking, who am I when nobody's watching? It's exhausting. It's lonely. And the worst part, you're so good at it that nobody even notices. So what's really happening here? Why do some people feel like they're constantly playing a role while others just exist naturally? Is it insecurity, people-pleasing, or something much deeper in your psychology? Stay with me because what you're about to learn might finally explain why you feel like a stranger in your own life. For some people, this constant performance starts with something psychologists call conditional love. This is when you learned early on, often in childhood, that love and acceptance weren't given freely. They were earned. You had to be good. You had to be helpful. You had to make people happy. And if you didn't, you felt the withdrawal, the disappointment, the coldness. So your brain adapted. It learned that the real you wasn't enough. But the performed you? That version got approval. Over time, performing stopped being a choice. It became your survival strategy. Now, even as an adult, you can't turn it off. You're constantly scanning the room, adjusting your tone, your opinions, your energy to match what you think people want. For this group, performing isn't about being fake. It's about staying safe. Because showing the real you feels like a risk they can't afford to take. Then there's a second type, the high achievers. These are people who've tied their identity to their accomplishments, their image, their reputation. They perform because they believe their value comes from what they do, not who they are. Psychologists call this contingent self-worth, when your sense of self depends entirely on external validation. So every day becomes a performance. At work, they're the competent professional. At home, they're the perfect partner or parent. On social media, they're living their best life. But behind it all, there's a gnawing emptiness, because they've built their entire identity on a performance that never stops. Studies show that people with contingent self-worth experience higher levels of anxiety and depression. Why? Because no matter how well they perform, it's never enough. The applause fades, the validation runs out, and they're left with the terrifying question, if I'm not performing, who am I? For them, the exhaustion doesn't come from pretending. It comes from never knowing if the real them would be enough. And then there's the third group, and this one's often misunderstood. These are people who feel like they're performing because they've disconnected from their authentic self. Psychologists call this self-alienation. At some point, maybe through trauma, chronic stress, or years of suppressing their true feelings, they lost touch with who they really are. Their opinions, their desires, their emotions, everything feels borrowed or manufactured. They're not performing to manipulate. They're performing because they genuinely don't know what's real anymore. It's like living behind glass. You can see life happening, you can participate, but you can't actually feel it. Research links this to depersonalization, a dissociative state where you feel disconnected from your own thoughts and body. For this group, performing isn't strategic. It's a symptom of being emotionally numb and desperately trying to seem normal while feeling like a stranger to themselves. But here's what ties all three together. They've all learned to prioritize perception over presence. They care more about how they're seen than how they actually feel. And that's not shallow, it's tragic. Because when you spend your whole life performing, you miss the one thing that makes life worth living. Genuine connection. Real intimacy. The experience of being fully seen and still accepted. Neuroscience backs this up. When you're performing, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for self-monitoring and control, is working overtime. But when you're authentic, when you drop the mask, your brain actually relaxes. You enter what psychologists call a flow state, where you're fully present, fully alive. That's not weakness, that's freedom. So if you feel like you're constantly performing, here's what you need to know. You're not fake. You're not broken. You're just exhausted from carrying a version of yourself that was never meant to be permanent. The real you is still there, buried under years of adaptation and survival. And the only way to find them again is to start taking small risks. Say what you actually think. Share what you actually feel. Stop editing yourself for an audience that isn't even paying that much attention. Because here's the truth nobody tells you. The people who love the performance, they don't really know you. But the people who love you when you stop performing, those are your people. And they're worth the risk. So here's the real question. Are you living or are you performing? And more importantly, are you ready to stop? If this hit home, hit subscribe. We dive into the psychology that finally makes sense of you. And if you felt this deeply, you need to watch our video on the psychology of people who sense when someone dislikes them. It connects perfectly to this feeling of constantly reading the room and adjusting yourself. Link is right there on the screen. Let's find ourselves again, together.